was given to me by my father, who currently still is in Hong Kong. And it basically tell me to obtain, the knowledge first before doing anything. So, and I think that's fairly applicable, in terms of what we're going to talk about, cultural issues and so forth. Part of the things that I'm going to talk about is, yeah, you have to obtain certain knowledge about certain culture, what they do, how they understand things, what's their behavior and attitude and so forth. But at the same time, actually, it's more than what my father said. It's not only knowledge, but it's the opportunity to be exposed, in that particular culture and really obtain the experience of relating to each other. And I think that's what we, going to talk about today. Because culture is really a construct, and so I think we need to be aware of that. The one area that I think a lot of people talk about is the whole idea about individualism, independence, and autonomy. So this is the whole idea of, the whole separation. You can individuate, from your own family, from your parents at a very young age. Now this is all then very different, let's say, in the Chinese culture. That is the whole idea. It's about less individuate from the family. That's the American individualism. But rather to say that you are part of the family. There's a collectiveness. There's a collectiveness of who you are as part of a family member. What role do you play in that family or even in the community? So there is a difference between individualism, autonomy, independence into collectivism, and I would say interdependence. And you will see that very much of a difference that impact, people's attitude, it impact people's behavior. In the, again, dominant mainstream American culture, we tends to value about openness, directness in terms of communication. And this is very different in terms of more of the traditional Chinese culture that really emphasize communication needs to be a little bit more indirect, a little bit more discreet, because again, you want to balance in terms of the kind of interpersonal harmonious nature. Remember, as I said earlier, about the interdependent. In order to be interdependent, you have to follow certain rules among that family or among that society. If Chinese are educated, let's say, in the Western world, so their understanding of mental illness is going to be very different than a Chinese that, let's say, is in China, in the rural area, not very educated, and really do look at, let's say, mental health, mental illness in a very, very different way. For instance, it could be, and I'm not, again, don't want anyone to stereotype that, someone can actually say that because of the nature of my ancestry, maybe we did something wrong in the past ancestor. That is why, so and so behave this way. And I think that, for instance, I would hear some, let's say, Chinese parents would say that, my son and daughter, they are so lazy. So they consider, let's say, certain even depressive symptoms as laziness, rather than saying that, well, because they are having depression. I think this is the difficult part, and as I said before, each family is different, and each child, young adult is different. So in many ways, we have to engage them at really their level in terms of their understanding. A number of years ago, for a few years, I was actually working very closely with a principal in Chinatown, and she, once a year, she always, invited me to meet with the parents and to talk about mental health issues related to teens and also later adolescents. And it's really quite incredible, in this school setting, that you will have parents that are very well educated, exposed, to the Western culture very early in their life, so that they have a good, let's say, concept or good understanding, maybe in terms of mental illness. Versus you have some parents that are, just came to the United States not too long ago, not too long ago, and certainly brought their cultural perspective, their explanation of certain behavior, and in some sense they have very limited kind of understanding when we talk about depression, hyperactivities and so forth, because all they know in their kind of a view of those behavior, as I mentioned, they could see it as laziness, not motivated. Um, and in some cases, they might just even say that, hey, I guess there's something related to, past family issues that now our child, kind of inherited this. If the family is much more have a different perspective, right? That's laziness, and other reasons behind, the depression and so forth, then I think it is much more difficult to communicate, to really kind of understand, to partner. Furthermore, then because of the way that they explain in terms of mental illness, medication, psychotherapy might not be the way that they think can help their child. And that's why I think that sometimes our services need to be really relevant, let's say to the Chinese culture. If that's what they embrace, we have to kind of break down that kind of a silo, break down that kind of a barriers. The culture emphasizes indirectness, subtlety in communication, not open expression. So maybe a therapist, when they see a Chinese clients or the parents, they would say, "Well, the parents or the client, they're withholding something. They're not telling us. They lack that openness." But it's appropriate in terms of cultural communication for Chinese not to be open, not to be as direct. For Chinese and also others that holding a really different explanation of mental illness, and also holding a different expectation in terms of what treatment means. I would say that the first step is to really create a front door, a front porch that is culturally appropriate. If that becomes part of the stigma, you certainly don't want to create a front porch or front door that is too public. Some of the community agencies that truly at the grassroots level, when they developed, then they truly serve those populations. Let's say there's some community agencies in Chinatown, Boston, and now they have some agency in Quincy, Massachusetts, that are truly grassroots, that really truly understand in terms of the kind of thinking of their people, their community. They really create a very welcoming, very culturally appropriate environment, so that people are feeling at ease to come, to seek help, feeling at ease that this is the right place that I can come. And I think that is really the critical part. So really what that means in terms of our services is we have to, in some sense, to enhance what we have, and specifically, and I think this is what the interview about, specifically to tie to that cultural appropriateness.